The file said they would be easy. Vale-Keth had catalogued 41 species across 19 star systems, and the file on Earth, the third planet, single yellow star, one unremarkable moon, had said the same thing every file said when the answer was going to be easy. Soft tissue, no natural armor, no venom, no weapon systems worth the name. He had written those words himself. He would spend the next 3 months wishing he hadn't. He started with the body, the way he always started. No armor, no significant claws, skin thin enough that a Cathari child could damage it without trying. The skeleton was calcium-based, brittle under enough force. The eyes were locked to a narrow band of light. They couldn't see in the dark, couldn't hear at the frequencies most predators used, couldn't smell at any range that mattered. And then there was the sleep. Every cycle without exception they went fully unconscious. Not rest, not low vigilance recovery, complete, helpless, unaware. Remove the sleep and the body dismantled itself within days. He typed the summary with the clean efficiency of a man who has done this 38 times before. Standard soft tissue species, recommend Category 2 approach. Category 2, 60 to 90 days, 3 continents, simultaneous planetfall, surrender. He had done it 11 times. It had gone 11 times exactly the way it was supposed to go. He moved to behavior, expecting nothing. He found something. The emotional system stopped him. Not because it was strong, because it was irrational in a way that didn't fit any clean column. Fear, grief, rage, shame, longing, they experienced all of it, all the time, at full volume, and had never in thousands of years of recorded history learned to manage it. They cried in front of enemies, in front of cameras they had installed to watch themselves. They formed bonds with members of other species entirely. Animals, creatures they allowed to live inside their homes, creatures they grieved when those creatures died. Vale-Keth stared at that entry for a long moment. Emotional volatility, he wrote. High susceptibility to psychological destabilization. Attachment bonds are a leverage point if required. He believed that when he wrote it. He moved to history. This was where the file first began to feel wrong. Not wrong the way bad data felt wrong. Wrong the way a door feels wrong when it opens in a direction you didn't expect. Humans have been in continuous armed conflict for the entire length of their recorded history. Not occasional, not resource disputes with long peaceful intervals between them. Continuous. They had been fighting each other before they had cities, before writing, before the wheel. There was not a single century on record in which some portion of the species was not engaged in organized violence against another portion of the same species. Twice in a single century, they had managed to pull in nearly the whole planet at once. They called those events world wars, as if namming the scale helped them comprehend it. Then, and this was the part that made Vale-Keth set down his notes and look at the ceiling, they stopped. They signed agreements. They rebuilt. They developed medicines. They made art that members of their own species wept over. They started again. New generation, new city, new beginning. And then they fought again. He leaned back in his chair. A species at war with itself was not building toward anything. It was consuming itself. The intraspecies aggression alone would fragment any resistance. No unified planetary defense was possible. The internal conflict would do half the work for him. Strategic asset, he wrote. Continuous internal conflict, expected to prevent unified resistance. He believed that too. He almost closed the file. The last section was physiological outliers. It was always the last section. In 38 prior reports, it had contained nothing that changed the picture. Some deep habit of thoroughness made him read it anyway. The numbers were wrong. Not bad data wrong. The sourcing was clean, he checked 3 times. Wrong in the way that they sat at the far edge of what a biological system should be capable of while still functioning. The recorded cases were soldiers, athletes, accident survivors, parents under extreme stress. Individuals who had, under documented conditions, continued to move through levels of physical damage the model said should have caused complete shutdown. Not isolated, not rare, a measurable, reproducible percentage of the population. He read the case files one by one. A soldier with 3 broken ribs who had carried a colleague 4 kilometers through hostile terrain. A parent who had lifted a vehicle off a child. Cases involving deep lacerations, significant blood loss, the body continuing past the point where the biological math said it should stop. Not for a moment, for sustained periods. He sat with the numbers for a long time. Then he typed the note that would cost him everything. Pain tolerance outliers, statistical noise, extreme edge cases, not representative of species average, standard documentation, no action required. He closed the file. He submitted the report. Outside the viewport, 11 warships moved through the dark between stars, each one built to end something. All of them aimed at the soft planet, the unremarkable species, the calcium bones and thin skin, and the strange small habit of mourning animals. Vale Keth should have felt settled. He mostly did. The pain tolerance data sat in the back of his mind, the way a loose thread sits at the edge of a garment, small, barely there, the kind of thing you notice once and then ignore because everything else looks fine. He told himself it was nothing. He was wrong about that too. The planetfall was clean. 3 continents, simultaneous, 400 local time across every landing zone, which meant most of the population was asleep. 11 Cathari campaigns across 19 star systems had produced a very clear picture of what worked. You came in the dark, you came everywhere at once, you gave the enemy no single point to rally around. The model said resistance would be scattered for 72 hours, then communication would collapse. Then the governments, fractured along exactly the old lines Vale Keth's report had predicted, would begin to conflict with each other about what to do. Then the window would open. The model was correct about 72 hours. It was not correct about anything else. The first anomaly report arrived 14 hours after planetfall. Admiral Thresh received it from a captain named Drevan, careful, methodical, the kind of officer who did not file reports that weren't necessary. 2 lines, flat and formal in the way of Cathari military communication. Ground Unit 7 has engaged a human resistance cell. Resistance cell is significantly undersized. Resistance cell has not retreated, awaiting further orders. Thresh read it twice. Sent back, continue engagement, report outcome. He moved to other things. 14 hours in, there were 100 small fires. This was one of them. 6 hours later, Drevan filed again. Resistance cell neutralized. Casualties outside. 4. Estimated human force engaged. 11. Note, human combatants improvised explosive devices from agricultural materials found on site. Several had no conventional weapons. 1 combatant continued to engage after confirmed limb injury. Recommend updated risk assessment for future ground engagements. Thresh forwarded it to Vale Keth without comment. Vale Keth read it in his quarters. He opened a new folder, Anomalies. He told himself he'd clear it out once the data settled. The folder now had 11 entries. He added a 12th. On day 3, the communication networks collapsed exactly as predicted. What the prediction had not accounted for was the speed at which humans switched to older, simpler methods. Runners, low-frequency radio, hand signals, physical messengers on foot and on 2-wheeled vehicles, moving through terrain that Cathari aerial surveillance found difficult to cover at low altitude. The resistance did not stop communicating. It got harder to intercept. Vale Keth added it to the folder. On day 5, Commander Sarah Okonkwo appeared on a transmission recovered from a destroyed communications post. She was standing in front of a map. Her face was calm in the way that certain things are calm, not because nothing was happening, but because the person in the middle of it had decided that panic was a resource she could not afford. She said 2 words. Sorted. The transmission cut. Vale Keth played it back 3 times. There was no tactical information in it. 2 words from a human officer to her staff. It meant nothing. He couldn't stop thinking about the way she stood. By the end of the first week, the pattern was visible, not in any single engagement, but in the shape of all of them together. On paper, the campaign was proceeding. Lines had moved in the right direction. Ground taken, human forces pushed back, infrastructure damaged. But the paper and the ground were starting to look different from each other. Human resistance forces were not defending. They were not standing in lines waiting to be engaged. They were moving constantly, unpredictably, hitting supply lines, hitting communication relays, targeting the parts of the Cathari operation that had never been hardened because no prior enemy had ever had the clarity or the nerve to go after them. A species with no warships, going after logistics. The Tillith had tried to fight ship to ship. They'd lasted a week. Humans were not trying to fight what Thresh had, they were trying to make it stop working. Then the footage arrived. Routine surveillance drone, low altitude, eastern sector, day 9 midday. A human soldier moving through a ruined structure. Kasari weapons fire, direct hit upper body. The soldier went down. That was expected, that was how the biology was supposed to work. The soldier got up. Not slowly, not gradually. Up, moving back into the structure, moving toward the source of the fire, not away from it. A second hit, lower body. The soldier went down again. Vale-Keth watched the timestamp tick upward. 8 seconds. He found himself counting without choosing to count. The soldier got up again. He played the footage back, then again, then again. He watched it 11 times before he closed the file, and he was not watching it for tactical information, and he knew he was not watching it for tactical information, and he sat in his chair and looked at the wall opposite him for a very long time. The wall said nothing useful. He opened a new section in the anomalies folder. He labeled it simply Threshold. He didn't write anything in it yet. He just left it open. 3 months. Thresh had never spent 3 months on a Category 2 campaign. He stood in the command room and looked at the map, and the map looked wrong. They held more territory than they had at planetfall. The lines had moved in the right direction, but he had learned across 90 days on this planet to stop looking only at the lines. The losses told the real story. On day 90 of a standard campaign, losses were a rounding error, the clean tail end of a concluded thing. Here at day 90, losses were accelerating. The daily casualty reports had gotten longer every week, not shorter. The resupply requests had doubled. He requested reinforcements from the home fleet and used the word logistical to describe the need. He did not use the word struggling. Vale-Keth came to him with a folder now obscene in size, over 200 entries, and laid out its shape without drama, in the flat voice of a scientist trying very hard to remain a scientist. Every time Cathari forces destroyed a local resistance structure, a new one appeared within days, not the same structure, a different one, leaner, adjusted to exactly what had just failed. The humans were not recovering. They were adapting in real time, mid-campaign, updating their methods based on what wasn't working and doing something else. Thresh listened without expression. "Is that unusual?" he asked. Vale-Keth said, "I have never seen it at this rate." On day 94, the report came from the prisoner facility. 63 human captives, standard procedure, intelligence, leverage. The Cathari psychologist, a thorough officer named Shul Vyers, had filed weekly reports that all said roughly the same thing: stress responses, disorientation, compliance developing over time. The Day 94 report said something different. She wrote it in the careful language of a professional who had been surprised and was trying not to show it. The prisoners had learned the language. Systematically, the ones who had picked up the most were teaching the others. They had mapped the entire facility's interior through routine movement patterns over 3 months and could describe it wall by wall, guard rotation by guard rotation. They had divided responsibilities among themselves without any visible hierarchy that surveillance could disrupt. One prisoner, a woman in the Western Bloc, had begun smiling at one of the guards, not provocatively, not in any way that violated protocol, a specific, small, entirely calm smile every time that particular guard passed. The guard had requested reassignment. He couldn't explain why. He just said the smile bothered him. Shul Vyers appended one line at the end of the report. "I would not describe the current population of this facility as controlled." Thresh forwarded it to Vale-Keth and went back to the map. Vale-Keth read it in his quarters. He did not sleep that night. Instead, he went back, further than the invasion report, further than first contact with the system. He pulled the deep evolutionary record, Earth's biosphere across geological time, long and violent in a way that made the current conflict look like a polite disagreement. He read about the extinctions, the ice ages, the atmospheric shifts that had killed most of life on the planet multiple times over. Each time something had survived, not by being the strongest, not by being the fastest, not by being the most heavily armored. By being the most adaptable, by changing faster than the thing that was trying to kill it. He read about the megafauna extinction, the wave of massive animals that had vanished from Earth at roughly the same time humans spread across it. Mammoths, giant ground sloths, cave bears, saber-toothed cats, things that had survived ice ages and predators larger than anything alive on Earth today. All gone. One species standing. He found a paper from the Human Scientific Archive on early hunting practices. The translation was imperfect, but the meaning came through clearly enough. Early humans had hunted prey larger and faster than themselves using sustained pursuit, not ambush, not superior strength. They followed the animal for days across distances that should have broken them, but didn't because of a cooling system, sweat-based, nearly unique among the large predators of their biosphere, that allowed them to keep moving in heat that forced everything else to stop. The prey didn't lose the race. The prey ran until there was nothing left, until the thing that was bigger and stronger and faster had nothing remaining, and then it stopped. And the humans walked up to it. Vale Keth stared at his screen for a long time. Then he opened the anomalies folder. He found the entry labeled Threshold, the one he had never written anything in. He understood. Sitting in the dark of his quarters, the fleet moving overhead and the war grinding on below him on a planet that should have been finished 2 months ago, he understood it the way you understand something that has been true the whole time, that you walked past 6 times, that was sitting in plain view from the very beginning. He opened the entry. He started writing. He wrote for 4 hours without stopping. The briefing room was cold, the way it was always cold. Cathari preferred it, the temperature that kept the mind sharp and the body just slightly uncomfortable, which was where Cathari thinking had always done its best work. Thresh sat at the head of the long table. 2 senior captains flanked him. Shawl Vyers attended by secure link from the surface. Vale Keth stood at the front with the revised catalogue on every screen. He had rewritten it in 6 days. He had not slept much during those 6 days. He started with the body. He put the original entry beside the new one. Original: no armor, no natural weapon systems, soft tissue, standard category 2. New: internal structure optimized for impact absorption and rapid movement over long distances. Following injury, tissue repair produces denser cellular structure at the wound site than was present before damage. They do not heal to their prior state, they heal past it. He let that sit. He moved to the next entry. Original: emotional volatility, high susceptibility to psychological destabilization. New: neurochemical systems capable under extreme stress of overriding pain signals, fear responses, and survival instincts. The same chemical architecture that produces grief and attachment also produces, at the upper threshold, a state in which the individual continues to function past biological shutdown signals. This is not a defect. This is a weapon the body deploys against itself to preserve group survival. He advanced the slide. Original: brief individual lifespan limits contribution to civilization. New: generational replacement rate produces cultural adaptation faster than biological evolution in most species. What humans cannot adapt to in 1 generation, they pass down as trauma, as knowledge, as drive. The next generation arrives already shaped by what destroyed the previous one. They do not recover from catastrophe, they metabolize it. He paused at metabolize, the right word, and a terrible word in this context, and moved on. He came to the slide he had been least looking forward to. Original: continuous intraspecies conflict, strategic asset, expected to prevent unified resistance. He had deleted that entry entirely. The replacement was longer than anything else in the document. Humans have been in continuous armed conflict with members of their own species for the entirety of their recorded history. This was assessed as a vulnerability. It is the opposite. They have been training against opponents who know exactly how to hurt them, who speak their languages, who understand their tactics, who can predict their behavior. 10,000 years of intraspecies warfare is 10,000 years of learning, at the highest possible cost, how to fight something that is trying as hard as it can to beat you. Every species the Cathari have defeated in 11 prior campaigns came to this conflict without that preparation. Homo sapiens came to this conflict having done nothing but prepare. We were not their first enemy, we are not even their most dangerous one. We inserted ourselves into an ongoing evolutionary arms race. We did so from below. He stopped talking. The room held the silence the way a room holds a sound after the sound stops. The last slide had 1 line on it. We did not find a prey species. We found an apex predator mid-hunt and inserted ourselves into the food chain below it. He left it up. He stepped back from the panel. His hands moved to adjust the data chart on the side panel, then moved it back, then to the same position he'd started from, because there was nothing wrong with the chart, and there had never been anything wrong with the chart, and his hands needed something to do while the rest of him waited. Thresh looked at the last slide for a long time. Finally he said, "How long have they known?" Vale Keths thought about it. "I think," he said, "they have always known." The room held that too. They found